Magna Hammer, dear.
Please be stand for the chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's council meeting. It's the reconvened meeting from the 7th of February. At the moment, I have apologies for absence from Councillor Wheatman and Councillor Walker. Is there any other apologies for absence? Yes, Councillor Spill.
Councillor Margaret Bailey.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Jones.
Councillor Greg is apologising for the delays at work.
Right, fair enough. You remember to send me relevant sheets, please. Declarations of interest. Just before we go storming in, we would take it that everyone who declared declarations of interest at the last meeting, they will transfer on to this evening's meeting, unless you have any extra declarations of interest. Councillor O'Shea?
Chair, we've got this advice note here circulated. It seems to indicate that people over 65 should declare an interest. My understanding is that this will affect the general population of the borough. And just as I'm a council taxpayer, you could say I have an interest there. So could I just have clarification about this over 65 thing is needing to declare an interest?
I shall hand you over to the legal officer who will rule on it.
The question of interest arises in relation to the proposal to have a differential rate in relation to council taxpayers who are over the age of 65 for a smaller proportion of the borough, so it's not affecting all of the taxpayers in the borough. So the question is for members to consider whether they have a non-registrable interest to be declared, whether it would affect them directly or a family member, a close associate, and then from there to go on to apply the test of whether they could then go on to participate in the meeting. That very much will depend upon your own circumstances and your own viewpoint.
So can I just ask a question in relation to the level of council tax? As a council taxpayer, I have an interest in that as well. Do I need to declare that I'm a council taxpayer?
No, in common with previous years, all members are deemed to potentially be council taxpayers and as such are able to participate in the general discussions and votes in relation to council tax.
Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. If you already advised I'd like to declare an interest because I'm over 65.
Councillor Frank?
Lost for the moment.
Thank you, Chair. If there's a general dispensation for councillors because we pay the same level of council tax as the rest of the population, should there not be a similar dispensation for all councillors who are over 65? Because it seems to me there's a rather blunt distinction. Failing that, believe it or not, I am over 65 and therefore I declare that I have such a non-registrable personal interest.
At present, the Constitution doesn't provide for a general dispensation. This issue has arisen simply in relation to there being a specific proposal which makes a differential on the basis of age.
Have we conducted an analysis to see if it would be quorate if all over 65-year-olds left the meeting?
No, there's been no analysis.
Councillor Spillard?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest. My husband's over 65 and I'm rapidly approaching it, so I could be affected by this.
Can you, to get past this, can you just stick your hands up if you're over 65?
Sorry, I want to make a statement.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't see you or hear you.
Chair, I want to declare the interest in that I'm over the age of 65, and I also have relatives and close friends who are over the age of 65, but I intend to vote on the behalf of all of the people of North Tyneside who will be voting against, therefore I'll not be leaving the hall.
Does that apply to everyone else?
I'd be voting against as well, sir.
Right, if you could fill in your form and just put on that you're over 65 and then we can cover it that way. That's the easiest way. Councillor Bell, Gary Bell.
Yes, Chair. As I wasn't chair at the last meeting due to my incapacitation, I've filled the form in, but we don't are working for the authority.
Thank you. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. I was very late to the last meeting, so I didn't make a declaration. So I've done a similar declaration tonight in relation to a relative working for the local authority, and I'm not over 65. Thank you.
Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chair. Just a declaration of interest of Whitworth Tyne Fire and Rescue Service, just when it comes up to precept, just in the interest of transparency. And I'm not over 65, although I feel like it sometimes.
Councillor Carol Verdis.
Thank you, Chair. I declare a non-registrable interest when we come to the Conservative budget and their proposal on the trade union facility time, as my brother has trade union facility time.
Councillor Brian Verdis.
Chair, too. With the trade union time, I declare an interest there, which I've put down. But also on the over 65, I've got a mother, cousins, aunties, uncles, friends are over 65. So do I have to declare an interest there?
Right. I wouldn't have thought so.
The Chair should declare an interest, but they may not need to leave the room.
You can declare an interest, but you don't need to leave the room. I think everybody in here has got people over 65. Councillor Thurlaway.
Chair, I'm not over 65, but surprisingly, but my father does work for Kia North Tyneside, and I should have declared that at the first meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Bell.
I missed the last meeting, but my daughter works for North Tyneside Council. Okay.
Is there anybody else?
My spouse is over 65.
Yes. Yes. No one over there? Right. Great. Oh, I didn't think you were that old.
Sorry, just, Chair, just. So I was wondering, the fact that I'm just, I suppose I've still got to declare it. But is it non-registrable? Because I'm trying to work, I've got people that are over 65 and I've just made 65, so are we both then?
It would be non-registrable.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position. Right, that's it. Right, we'll move on. Recorded votes. I'd just like to remind members that regulations are now in force requiring local authorities to have recorded votes or named votes on any decision at budget meetings relating to the budget or council tax. Right. We now move on to item 3. At the council meeting on the 7th of February, the proposals of the Cabinet were formally received by the council. I will request Councillor Glindon to move the Cabinet's proposals. Once those proposals are seconded, I will invite members to ask questions relating only to the new information contained in the report and the Mayor's final amendments that we are circulating earlier this week. I will then take the objections from the Conservative members and are reminded that they have already had the opportunity to raise questions of a technical nature with officers in advance of the meeting. I would like to reiterate the comments I made at the last meeting about treating others with respect when asking or responding to questions, and also during the debate. And I'd just like to comment on the last meeting. I thought the last meeting was actually very friendly, and there was a little bit of fun about it. And it's not often we get fun in a budget meeting. Right? So I now pass on to Councillor Glindon, who has 10 minutes, I nearly give you more time, to put forward your proposals.
Chair, it'll be 2 minutes. I've already put them forward once,
I'll just go over them again. I mean, our budget is a budget for the whole of North Tyneside, unlike something else we're going to hear here tonight. We've been in a very difficult position with regard to the options to prepare a balanced budget when bringing together the impact of reduced funding over a number of years alongside additional unfunded burdens and demand-led pressures we've faced over the last few years. Council needs to remember that central government, when considering our funding requirements, assumes that we make a suggested increase in council tax, and they will continue to do so in their assessment of the baseline funding needed by the authority. By bringing forward these council tax raising powers in a settlement, the government has recognised the cause for urgent need to help councils tackle some of the immediate social care pressures they face. However, this shifts the burden of the tackling of the national crisis on the councils and their residents. Therefore, as I said the last time, the proposed council tax increase included in the budget proposals for 1920 is 2.99%. We continue to face the challenge of maximising the use of available resources to ensure that the entire borough continues to grow through investment and that essential services continue to be delivered. Achieving this balance grows more difficult every year, and we can see no easing of the relentless pressure to secure efficiencies in the current financial environment. Despite the challenges, we continue to focus on achieving the overall policy objective shaped in our North Tyneside plan. We will continue to look to make a difference for residents by making the council work smarter, continuing to putting people at the centre of what it does, ensuring that the organisation maximises how it uses public money to achieve residents' priorities, including delivery of the economic plan. I'm going to say this now because I was trying to forget to say it, but can I thank all the staff that have taken part in the objection and also helping us with our budget proposals. A lot of staff won't know how much effort they put into it, but we do really appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pickard.
Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Is there any questions? No questions? Then we move on. Right. I'll now invite Councillor Glindon to move the Cabinet proposals. You've already had that. I forgot to turn over.
Do it again if you want.
No, you said 2 minutes. Aye. Yes. Can I now invite Councillor Wallace to move the Conservative Group's objections? You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. The Conservative budget will save residents money with a much lower tax rise than the elected Mayor and Cabinet want to impose, and will also introduce a freeze in the rate for households of over 65s. It will restore the weekly bin collections, provide more money for repairing roads and pavements, and additional funds to continue regeneration on the seafront, which under the Labour budget would be at a standstill. The budget we propose is a balanced budget for which the Council has sufficient resources and uses those resources for services for residents. In sharp contrast with the budget proposed just before, we wish to keep any council tax rise as low as possible, and thus we propose a 1% rise only, in line with residents' preferences, and we propose no rise at all for households where the taxpayers are aged over 65, instead of a hefty hike of almost 3%, which we believe is not necessary. Our budget is set against the background of a stronger growing economy thanks to the Conservative government's management of the country's finances. Employment continues to grow, with record numbers now in work, and unemployment continues to fall across the country. Recent figures have confirmed this again, and it's falling here in the North East. It's notable and very welcome that the unemployment rate in the borough is now lower than it was before the financial crash of 2008. We'd like to see more efforts to encourage businesses to move here, working with neighbouring authorities. The recent North of Tyne devolution deal, encouraged by the government as part of rebalancing the country's economy, provides increased opportunities to do so. We see business rates income rising, which assists with future sustainability of council finances, and we expect it to continue to rise, provided opportunities are taken. Control of an allocation of revenue of £20 million per annum over a 30-year period will drive growth. The opportunity to integrate employment and skills training across the whole area will be beneficial, alongside an educational improvement challenge and devolution of the adult education budget. Working jointly across the three authorities with the Department for International Trade will be more effective in increasing trade and encouraging investment in our area. We welcome a successful recent bid to be part of a business rates pilot, which is expected will link more closely businesses with the new devolved authority, and the gains will be invested locally in the North of Tyne area. These changes are all part of the Conservative plan for a northern powerhouse, further increasing local prosperity and devolving power. We expect also that there will be additional council tax income from new homes. The figure of £381,000 in the Labour budget for 2021 is, we believe, significantly understated, as was the case last year. This income too will add to future sustainability. We would make the most of opportunities for shared services and joint working. The previous Conservative Mayor introduced a shared internal audit service which has been successful, but there have been no further sharing exercises. All services and posts should be reviewed from the Chief Executives downwards with a view to sharing, and again the North of Tyne devolution will assist with opportunities. Our budget enables the Council to provide services which are important to residents, with a much smaller council tax rise, restoring weekly bin collections and increasing repairs to roads and pavements. Surveys show regularly that residents feel strongly on both matters. The Government recently provided across the country an extra £420 million for highway repairs, in which this Council will share, and we propose an extra sum too. We hope the Council will be bidding for funds from the new Future High Streets Fund, worth over £600 million. We propose also additional expenditure of £6,000 on provision of extra dog waste bins, a relatively small sum but one which will make a big difference, enabling dog owners to help keep the area clean. Some pavements are currently awful and dog waste bags are left in verges and on paths. We propose the same sum for additional bins of a larger size in busy areas such as outside schools and shopping centres. We'll finance the budget in several ways. We will reduce the Council magazine to 2 editions per year. We note the elected Mayor pledged to AXA publication entirely. We will reduce the cost of trade union facility time by half, saving almost £114,000. Alone of Council budget, this one seems to be untouched. The priorities are wrong. We prefer to provide services instead of financing the trade unions. Spending on the Mayor's Office, the Policy Department, Engagement and Communications would be reduced by £300,000, savings which don't affect frontline services, and we believe management savings can be increased to £1.25 million. We propose reducing the cost of foreshore parking permits, which were massively increased in price by the Mayor and Cabinet, from £50 to £250, and as we predicted, sales plummeted. We propose to reduce the cost to £100, more affordable, which will result in more take-up and thus more income, whilst making parking easier for drivers and reducing congestion in many coastal streets, where residents often have difficulty getting parked anywhere near their own houses. We'll use the sum of £150,000 from the Strategic Reserve to fund the capital investment in roads and pavements and in the seafront regeneration, which will leave the reserve at well over £14 million, well above the level required in the Reserves and Balances policy. We note in the current year that spending was axed on food and drink for councillors. We supported this measure, which has saved £10,000. We suggested the savings several years ago, but it wasn't implemented, and had it been, thousands of pounds could have been saved earlier. We are glad that drinks are no longer served to councillors after meetings of the full council. Since the catering saving has been accepted, we urge the Mayor and Cabinet to adopt other suggestions which we've made previously, namely use of a junk mail opt-out promoted on the Council's website with a view to reducing the amount of rubbish to collect and dispose of, which will save money. We're pleased that the wash and squash bottle recycling scheme, which Councillor Hodgson introduced, is still operational. Disposing of the civic car, the £27,000 spent on this astonished many residents, and we wonder whether it will actually comply with the new clean air zone which is proposed. More extensive use of IT to enable better and more provision of services. For example, a map facility on the Council website so that residents or businesses can pinpoint problems exactly, and uploading photographs, saving costs in investigation. High-definition cameras on Council vehicles could take images of road surfaces, saving money by identifying problems before they increase in size. More focus could be given to encouraging healthy eating. Insufficient attention has been given to this part of a healthy lifestyle. Proposals tend to focus on exercise, but a longer-term and broader approach could be taken and work done with schools and caterers to encourage use of existing facilities to provide more cookery classes during the day or in clubs after school and during holidays, as well as enabling children and young people to learn to cook healthy meals and thus save money and budget better. There should be less demand on health services or social care in the future, which will save money as well as providing healthier lifestyles. Work could be done to encourage use of school facilities for science clubs after school or in the holidays. There is a shortage of skills in this field, and we want our children to have the best chances of employment. This is particularly relevant now that there will be a new Institute of Technology as part of the North of Tyne devolution. We suggest again that a study is made of the feasibility of current proposals for the restoration of the former outdoor pool at Tynemouth to see if they are viable, and should they be found not, then the site could be used for a water park. A further year has gone by without this happening. The water park at Whitley Bay has been well used, and similar provision in Tynemouth would remove an eyesore whilst improving facilities. In conclusion, Chairman, our budget is balanced and affordable. It will improve services and save money for residents. It will help keep the environment cleaner, maintain libraries, repair more roads and paths, continue seafront improvements and assist older people. We're focusing on the issues that matter. I hope that all will support us. Thank you.
You have a seconder? Councillor Austin?
Yes, Chair, formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. No. I now invite members to ask questions on the objection. Councillor Frank Lott.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed throughout that there was something of a reliance on other budgets, whereas this should be North Tyneside Council's budget, but the budget of the North of the Tyne Devolved Authority comes into play. And I also noticed in paragraph 5 of the report that's just been read to us, reference to the Department for International Trade. Can I just ask, is this the department headed up by Dr. Liam Fox MP, who promised on his appointment to have 40 international trade deals, that's 40 international trade deals in place by the 29th of March when we exit Europe? And as of this date, he has precisely 1/2 of that figure in place. And by 1/2, I mean the 0, not the 4. So are we really going to replace reliance on that Department of International Trade for our future increase in trade and encouragement of investment?
Well, Chairman, I think the administration is already doing that. It is one of the matters which was referred to in the successful pilot bid for the business rates retention. That was one of the virtues of this bid, so it's clearly been welcomed already by the current administration here in this council.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question on page 2. When it comes to the 1.25 million in savings and management, if I'm looking at your figures right, that constitutes 50% of your proposed spending, and yet it covers 10 words on that page. And I'm wondering, could you give us a little bit more information, or could you elaborate a little bit more on where those savings are going to come from?
Chairman, the administration is already committed to management savings, again unspecified in the elected mayor's budget. We are suggesting that they should be expedited. There are already, for example, there's one of the senior roles is empty. That of HR, it's been empty for many months. That must perhaps question whether that role is actually necessary. And there are departments where one manager is managing one person. I would suggest that they could be reviewed. Most people would expect managers to be managing several members of staff.
Chair, if I could just come back on that. I'm trying to understand, because you're right, we have done some slimline of the management system. What I'm trying to say is, you specifically come and said that you're going to save £1.25 million in management. Now, I would like to work with you on that one. Where exactly would this come from? Do you have any specific roles in mind, any heads of... You've already mentioned one with HR. Is there anything that you can show me that would balance out to £1.25 million?
I don't think it's necessary for me to specify the roles, Chairman. The senior management team, one of the charters which I was provided, showed that the costs were well on the way to £2.5 million. I'm sure, therefore, there's scope for savings.
Councillor Wallace, I'm sorry, that constitutes 50% of your spending. I'm asking, you've got 50% of your spending on that one saving. And what I'm trying to understand is, have you done any feasibility studies to determine whether or not it is actually possible to get £1.25 million in additional savings in management? If we do accept your budget, it's going to be 50% of your budget is based on that one saving. So I would like to see if there's any type of feasibility that you've done.
Chairman, we discussed this, our objection with the officers, and I also would like to thank the officers as the Cabinet member did, and that was acknowledged as a perfectly sound budget.
Okay, I'm obviously not going to get an answer. It's very clear that there's no feasibility study on this one, so I'm going to move on to where we say that you're going to save £300,000 on the Mayor's Office and engagement communications. Could you tell me if you expect that to result in less engagement, especially on the budget setting process?
Chairman, the corporate strategy team covers quite a lot of functions, including the elected mayor, policy and research, engagement and so forth. I think that savings could be made, and indeed we have discussed it, as I've said, with the officers. I think savings could be made from that department.
Okay, very specifically on the communication side of things, would the reduction in £300,000 have a negative impact on communication, especially around the budget setting process? That's specifically what I'm asking you.
Well, one of the results of the engagement process was that more residents favoured a 1% rise in council tax than favoured the higher rises, and yet that result of the engagement has not been heeded in the Mayor and Cabinet's proposals. So perhaps the questioner has little faith in the engagement process.
I think it's kind of strange, considering that you asked 16 questions at the last meeting around engagement, and yet you don't have an idea whether or not this is going to affect engagement. I thank you for your answers, but obviously you're not going to answer them.
No, I'm suggesting it could be done more effectively, Chairman.
Councillor Bolger.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions relating to the council tax. It states here on page 17, no council tax increase in the financial year 2019 to 20 for persons aged 65 or over where they are the liable party, so that means named. I know, for instance, council tax is based on 2 people over 18 in the property. So will this over 65-year-old rule apply to both to qualify for this?
Yes, Chairman, it's where those who are named on the bill are over 65.
You've got a second question?
Yeah. What if this over 65 is already disregarded?
Well, sorry, Chairman, I don't understand the question.
The question basically was, if the person is already disregarded, how is it going to help them?
From the point of view of benefit, those who are already disregarded are taken out of the calculation, Chairman.
Councillor Johnson?
Can I have a few more questions?
No, I'll
related
move
to council
on.
tax?
You were too slow. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. Since introducing alternate weekly collections, recycling is up by near 10%, household waste is down by 12.1%, and we took 10,000 miles of HGV off the road. How will you ensure the environment is protected in terms of no more waste going to landfill, the recycling level is kept up, and there's not more miles back in the road if you're going to reintroduce weekly collections?
Well, Chairman, we are responding to residents' requests. People are not happy with having alternate weekly collections. I'm pleased that recycling at this stage does seem to be increasing. I don't see why that should decrease, and indeed the government is making more efforts to ensure that there will be greater standardisation of what can be recycled. In some authorities you can recycle a lot more, for example, than you can here, and I think it would be better if there was a clearer idea for people of what can and can't be recycled. So I do have confidence that people will continue to recycle. But we do know, of course, that people are very concerned about the amount of waste that's in bins in public areas, for example, and for some people it is very difficult to recycle their household waste, and having an alternate collection has proved extremely difficult for them.
The question was, how are you going to keep the miles off the road? How are you going to ensure recycling stays the same? And how are you going to reduce waste going to landfill? Not why you're doing it. How are you going to do that if this gets passed?
Well, if there are extra bin lorries, if bin lorries are making extra journeys, then necessarily the number of miles will increase. I cannot guarantee that people will recycle the same amount, but equally neither can the Cabinet member who is asking the question provide that guarantee. I have faith that people will continue to recycle.
It's your proposal, Councillor Wallace, not mine, but I'll move on to a different question anyway. You're spending on bins.
Sorry, I'm afraid I didn't understand that comment.
It's your proposal, not mine, so I'll move on to a different...
Yes,
understand.
Indeed it is my proposal.
Yeah. Move on to a different question, Councillor Wallace. Your funding to pay for new and larger bins is enough to pay for 50 bins. If we introduce 50 bins, the cost of fuel, staff, and additional cost of getting rid of waste would be £27,000. Why haven't you made provision for that in your budget?
I don't think there was any specification in, as to where the funding was coming from for the additional bins which the Mayor announced at Cabinet in January. But the officers have accepted that this is a reasonable proposal. I think also it would probably save the council resources, because there have been reports of increased fly tipping. Indeed, I've seen tweets from councillors concerned about fly tipping in their wards and people just dumping litter in the streets. And there have also been numerous reports of overflowing bins. We didn't actually specify 50 bins. It's whatever
that would be enough to pay for 50 bins. So you've got no idea where the additional funding for the staff, fuel and waste would come from.
I'm very surprised at that, actually, because in my own ward, a larger bin was damaged and had to be replaced, Chairman. It was replaced, unfortunately, by a smaller bin, which is now overflowing partway through the day. I asked if there could be a larger bin. I was told that there were none available. The council didn't buy them anymore. But the officers did then suggest that the nearby business might sponsor it at a cost of £620. Now, that's an enormous cost for a business to buy. An awful lot of stock has to be sold to make a profit of £620 pounds to provide an extra bin. So I don't quite understand that 50 bins would come from £6,000. That certainly doesn't equate with the information that I was given in that member's inquiry.
I'm sure you're aware that bins come in different sizes, Councillor Wallace, because you just said it yourself. It would be possible. It would be possible to get 50 bins from the additional funding that you were putting in. Even that 50 bins cost an additional £27,000 for the staffing, the fuel, and the additional cost of waste. My question was, where are you going to pay for that, not what is going on in St Mary's Ward, Councillor Wallace?
Well, I'm sorry that you're not bothered about the litter in St Mary's Ward. We're concerned with the litter across the borough. We didn't say 50 bins, and indeed, from the figures that my member's inquiry, that's not the same, so there seems to be some confusion as to the information and the costs which are being provided, Chairman.
How many bins are you going to provide then, Councillor Wallace?
Well, if it was £620 per bin, it would appear that you would get 10, just under. Obviously it isn't. The Cabinet member seems to think it's 50 bins. But either way, I would suggest that extra bins are desirable in order to deal with the problem of litter, which the elected mayor has clearly already acknowledged by the provision of some larger bins. We are adding to that provision.
We're well aware of the problem. We're well aware that extra bins are provided, and we are actually in our own budget providing extra bins, Councillor Wallace, which you'd be delighted to know. However...
I hope you'll support my budget too, then.
However, where will these bins be located? If you've got 10 bins, are they going to be spread around the borough? Are they going to be in St Mary's Ward alone? Or are they going to be around the borough?
No, I'm not providing a budget just for St Mary's Ward. We've made very clear this is for the whole of the borough, and we would look to the officers to provide their professional opinion as to which are the areas which are particularly suffering with overflowing litter bins, whether it be outside schools, whether it be shopping centres, outside a swimming pool, wherever there is a problem, and that they would be best deployed.
So half a bin for each ward under your calculations?
I think that's a rather fatuous remark, Chairman. I don't think it's taking seriously what we are making as a serious proposal to deal with the rubbish in this borough.
Councillor Spillard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back. I've got two questions, and it's going back to the suggestion that we should have no rise at all for households where the taxpayers are over 65. However, there's nothing whatsoever to explain why you think that should be introduced. And I just wondered if you could expand on that, please.
Well, we know, Chairman, that over 65s are often in a position where they find it more difficult to increase their income to meet rising costs, and therefore we think that's an appropriate discount, if you like, or appropriate freeze to implement.
Thank you. So I'll go back to my response to that in comments, but what I would also like to know is where in these figures you've taken the cost, if this was taken up, you've taken into account the cost of administering it, bearing in mind that I don't know what percentage of people will turn over into 65 in North Tyneside each year, but with over 100,000 houses, it will be considerable. How the council would do this and what the staff costs would be for extra time taken up to implement it, because people would become 65 at various points in the year. There would be no way to measure when and how it happened. So have you taken that into account? Is there a line in the budget against this?
Yes, Chairman, the administration costs are included in the figure which we have put forward in our budget. We would propose that it be those who are 65 and over on the 1st of April when the new financial year starts, so it will be a once a year exercise. I would also add to my previous response about the taxpayers who are less likely to be able to increase their income. Of course, many taxpayers, many retired people, I should say rather than taxpayers, many people over 65 have already suffered when their pensions were clobbered by the raid on them by Gordon Brown at the start of Tony Blair's first administration.
So can I just ask though, have you actually put a figure on of the cost of what the extra administration would be? Could you actually give me a figure? I know you've got various large figures around costs, but have you actually worked out how much it would cost in time to do this? Because there would have to be some sort of checking mechanism. Dates of birth, etc. would have to be checked out, I presume. And that would take considerable time.
Yes, Chairman. The administration cost would be £7,493.30.
Sorry, could you just repeat that figure, please?
£71,493.30.
So it would be 71,000 extra cost, and also the loss of any extra council tax you're proposing. So overall, what you estimate the cost of having a freeze on council taxpayers over 65 and 71,000? How much does that come to altogether?
That is the total cost, which is specified in the budget, Chairman, of £298,339, which is on page 4.
And does that also include the cost of system upgrades? Because there would need to be IT costs associated to that as well?
Yes, Chairman.
Councillor Carol Purdes.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if the leader of the Conservative group can explain how they've engaged with the residents on their budget proposals.
Sorry, could Councillor Burgess repeat the question, please?
I certainly can. Can the leader of the Conservative group explain how they've engaged with the residents of North Tyneside on their budget proposals?
We have not yet done so, Chairman, but if this objection is accepted, it would then go back to Cabinet, and then, of course, there would be an opportunity for engagement thereafter.
So therefore, you're hoping to delay the process of this budget? And
no, Chairman, I think that this is a proposal which is of such manifest benefit that placing an announcement upon the website would attract a lot of attention.
And could you explain what kind of negotiations you would get into with the residents and what type of venues you would go to? How would you do it? Would it be online? Would it be face-to-face? And how many people are you expecting to negotiate or talk to?
It would be done as part of the Council's engagement function, but I think that placing it upon the website would attract a lot of attention for something which is so clearly of benefit to an awful lot of people.
And how do you hope to do that if in your proposals you are trying to, and on the corporate strategy part of your budget, you're going to be cutting engagement?
I'm sure it's not labour intensive to put something on the website, Chairman.
Councillor O'Shea.
I realise that this is a budget for next year, only 1 year, but I'm just wondering if the Leader of the Opposition could just tell us a little bit more as to whether she has considered or taken advice about the consequential effects on future financial years of the growth proposals in the budget.
Finance officers have accepted this as a perfectly satisfactory proposal, Chairman.
Chair, the question was, in future years, have you taken advice or have you considered the impact of these proposals on future years' budgets?
I think that there will be sufficient funding, Chairman. We know that a lot of the forecasts for future income have been woefully on the low side.
Chair, the question is yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chair. Back to the council tax freeze for bill payers over 65, would you directly benefit from this, Councillor Wallace?
Will I directly benefit from it? No, Chairman, I will not. I'm sorry to disappoint you, I'm actually below 65. Had a tough paper round. Like all ladies, Chairman, I'm 29.
Be careful, because Edward's probably the standard vote for saying that.
What, for saying I'm a lady, Chairman? All ladies are slightly economical with the truth, perhaps with regard to their age, but I'm most certainly not 65.
Councillor Glendon, see your hand up.
I did, Chair, thank you, but everybody's asked all the questions I was going to ask, so.
All right.
Well, I'll still plod on. Can I go the reduction in the council tax increase and ask Councillor Wallace, is it just for 1 year or is it for future years?
Well, I hope it would be for future years as well, Chairman. Indeed, perhaps there won't be a council tax rise at all next year in Councillor Clinton's budget, which would be perfect.
So therefore, what you're saying is that in the 4-year plan, your increase would be 1% per year. I know you've only done it for 1 year. Your increase would be 1% per year. So we're losing 1.99% for every year of them 4 years.
Chairman, I can't say what next year's budget will be, but as Conservatives, we believe in the lowest level of tax possible for taxpayers, consistent with a good level of service.
So you will be aware that the government, which I said in the last council meeting we had, the government has advised us to put up 2.99%. The reason for doing that is because they're going to cut the grants each year. So therefore, if this year we've put up at 2.99%, and basically Next year, we'll expect less grants, so therefore, if you're going to go 1%, we're going to lose 1.98% for the next 4 years in funding.
Chairman, I can't say what next year's position will be. We will certainly be looking at it again with a view, as always, to having the lowest taxes consistent with good services. As Conservatives, we start from a position of allowing people to keep as much of their own money as possible. We don't start from a position of trying to levy the highest amount of tax we think we can get away with.
We're not trying to levy nothing, we're just taking the advice of the government. You know, you see that, you know, there's councils up and down the country, Tory councils as well, which are complaining about the fact that we're getting starved of funding. And that you're here now to give a, you know, to reduce our funding even more. We're struggling for social care, we're struggling for children's funds, yet you're going to give money away to people who, in some cases, I mean, you know, you say you're not 65, I'm over 65, well over it. But basically, I have a good pension. My wife has a good job, a good wage. We don't need the 1%. There'll be a lot of people in that same area as us who don't need the 1%. So therefore, you're going to turn around and say, well, if you don't need the 1%, you can pay the 2.99%.
Chairman, people would have to claim the discount anyway. It's always up to people whether they claim things or not. They don't have to do it. For example, those who are over 60 or 65, whatever it is, can choose to pay a full trade fare. They don't have to buy a senior rail card. They don't have to buy a Nexus, is it a gold card it's called on the Metro? They don't have to buy one of them. If Councillor Clinton's in that position, you know, he can choose to pay the higher rate of council tax. He could get his chequebook out and make a donation to the council funds for that matter. But it's not, people are not obliged to claim a discount like that.
Just to let the council know, I don't deal in cheques, cash only.
Actually, I'd just take Councillor Clinton. I'm not giving away money. It's simply a case of taking less. And, for example, he's talking about payments for services. Perhaps he'll support me then, therefore, in our proposals to reduce the amount of money which goes to the trade union movement. The trade union movement is extremely wealthy. Is that a good use of council taxpayers' money? I think not.
Chair, for the amount of reorganisation we've done within this council in the past few years, we've been very much involved with the trade unions. And, you know, in future years to come, they'll be a valuable asset again for us to actually negotiate a downward trend as far as funding is concerned. Can I just ask on the savings through Treasury management? Do you think that that's a risk?
No, Chairman, not at the level which we have proposed. Looking at the figures for the amount of money which has been saved in Treasury management, the numbers are actually colossal. For example, in the current year, the budgeted interest was 8.2 million, the actual was 5.3. The saving has been 2.3 million pounds. In the previous year, the budgeted amount was 8,700,000. Actual was 4.8 million, a saving of almost 4 million pounds. Previous year again, a saving of 5 million pounds. The year before that, a saving of 2.7 million. I think, therefore, the saving which we are using in our budget of 400,000 pounds is a very modest amount.
That £400,000 is additional to the savings that we've put in. Basically, you know, I mean, everybody knows that the banks at this moment in time are in turmoil. Lending rates, although you can get into a fixed rate, lending rates are, you know, the Bank of England, I know we don't borrow through the banks, right, so don't come back to us on that. But even the loan board where we borrow from, you know, it's something we're going to have to put their rates up. So I'm just wondering whether, you know, the figures that you've just quoted there, there's been a lot of money taken out of Treasury management, a lot of savings made, and there's only so much savings you can make. I just wonder whether that £400,000, being a little sum, is not just going to break the bank.
I think not, Chairman. Obviously, there has been the professional advice of the officers, and that is regarded as a realistic figure to put in our budget. And with regard to interest rates, of course, they are very low, and I don't think there's any expectation. The section on Treasury Management in this report does not indicate that there's going to be a significant hike in interest rates.
I know what I can tell that, can I, because it changes from day to day at this moment in time. Can I come back to the increase in management savings? Over the years, we've reduced management quite heavily and invested in frontline services for obvious reasons, because of the funding that was there for frontline services has been taken away. We think that now we are the structure of management is gone as far as it can go. And as my colleague had said before, £1.25 million to be taken away from management savings is an awful lot of money when it's a lean machine anyway.
Is that a question, Chairman?
Do you think?
No.
That was one of my answers, that no. Can I now go through some of the things that you've... I'll go now to the seafront regeneration. You did make a statement before that in your plan yesterday you're going to put £100,000 down to seafront regeneration, because if you don't do it, we won't put any funding towards it. Like we told you at the last meeting, that as far as any regeneration work is concerned, it won't be put on the plan until such time as we've actually got the money. There is plans there, and I mean it's not a secret that we intend to do the whole of the rest of the promenade. We've got money to do repairs to the sea wall along our end. We also put in for a lighthouse, but we didn't get the money. And we're all looking at that again. So basically, can I just ask you what £100,000 will do along there?
I appreciate that it's not an enormous amount of money, Chairman, but it has been very disappointing and remarked on by an awful lot of people that the seafront regeneration seems to have ground to a halt in the area near the Rendezvous Cafe. That building, a very successful business and well loved by many people. And yes, of course, it's in my ward, but it's not just because it's in my ward. It is well known and well loved, but has needed repairs for a very long time. And the public toilets beside it are bordering on the Dickensian, Chairman. I don't think they give a very good impression of this borough at all. So I would think that that particular area would merit some work which could realistically be achieved. I know a survey was carried out in the autumn, and I have been requesting details of that, but they haven't. It hasn't appeared yet. It hasn't been given to me yet. I think that area is particularly important, Chairman, because not only is it well known locally, but because of the success and popularity of the Vera television series, a lot of people do come down to look at the areas which have been shown on the film. And as I say, I don't think it gives a good impression of the borough when you've got toilets in particular which are in a poor state. I'm not in any way criticising the cleaning staff there. It is the actual fabric of the building that I'm talking about. And I would hope for good repairs as well, and maintained repairs. The toilets at Watt Slope, for example, were renewed, and yet part of them were out of action for several months late last year. So I would hope that there will be repairs that and work that is reliable. Thank you.
Chair, I'm sort of astounded that £100,000 is going to do all that work, but as I say, we do have plans for there. We're not going to put them on our forward plan until such times we've got the money. That's what we're trying to do all the time now. If we haven't got the money, it doesn't go on. If we get the money, it goes on. And that's the agreement that me and the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor have got. Can I just come to... he did make a statement before that about the unemployment rate. Can I just tell you that the unemployment rate in North Tyneside has risen, and the latest figures out. So, you know, you've probably got the figures for the overall of the country. It's actually 575 more this January than what it was last January, and 123 more this January than what it was in December. So, just to make you aware of that.
Overall, though, Chairman, unemployment has fallen significantly under this government, and indeed across the country there's been nothing short of a jobs miracle.
I think Councillor Glindon's trying to explain that it's not in North Tyneside, maybe nationally, but not in North Tyneside.
We're also
and we're here tonight for North Tyneside's budget.
We're above the average as well within North Tyneside.
So is the statement in the Mayor's report that the unemployment was lower than it was before the crash? Is that not the case? No.
I didn't quite catch that. What did you say?
Sorry, Chairman, I'm just going to look for the statement about it in the Cabinet's own policy, in the Cabinet's own papers. Chairman, the statement in the budget report, the borough's unemployment rate continues to fall and is lower than before the global financial crisis of 2008. That was what I was welcoming.
All I'm saying is that's 2008. Yes, I appreciate that. What you just said was you didn't say you didn't give a date. You just said that the employment rate has dropped, which it hasn't. Anyway, that's by and by. You did make a statement about the Mayor's office. As you are aware, since you left office, the number of people that we've removed from the Mayor's office is 5 people. I think I said you were reduced by £300,000 with the Policy Department, Engagement and Communications in the Mayor's office. And what I say is that the services do not affect frontline services. Savings do not affect frontline services. I believe the management savings can be increased to 1.25 billion. That's what we already talked about. But the £300,000 they're talking about there, and you've specifically mentioned the Mayor's office. The Mayor's office is down to the bare bone now. So, there's 3 people in there now. So, could you tell me how many people you intend to remove from that office?
That's all part of corporate strategy, Chairman, so that would be a decision for the Chief Executive, I think.
So therefore, what you're saying is that the £300,000 should go on top of the 1.25 million management cost as well?
Yes, and allied to the shared services as well, Chairman.
Right. You made a statement on your objection that about the £10,000 saved from food and drink for councillors, and you've welcomed that. We suggested this savings from years ago was not implemented. Can I ask why you didn't implement it when you were in charge?
I think we should have done.
But you didn't.
We could balance the budget without it.
So could we, but we decided to take it away.
Good for you.
I could play this all night if you want. So I think I'll just leave it there and give somebody else a chance to thank you.
Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. Oops. In the wrong direction. Thank you, Chair. And thank you also to Councillor Wallace for pointing out the fact that the good stewardship of the finances by Labour and North Tyneside saved £40 million in projected interest over the last 4 years. It's nice of you to bring that to this meeting to highlight the fact.
I don't think actually those figures have been sufficiently sufficiently broadcasted. So these are really big savings which have been available due to the low interest rates, Chairman.
And which stock into our budget year on year in any event, which you should know because you're the former cabinet member for finance. I have one question because everything else has been asked tonight. The council tax freeze for bill pays over 65, is the intention for that to be means tested or not?
No, Chairman, it isn't. It is for all those who are 65 and over. That is the intention of it. As I've already explained, there are a lot of similar concessions which are not means tested.
Okay,
we think
thank
that this
you.
is an age group which does particularly have difficulty with rising cost. We know a lot of people of that age, and indeed younger too, who find that the council tax is their biggest regular outgoing, and it's often particularly painful for the over 65s.
So can I ask then, from the point of view of a Band A taxpayer in North Tyneside paying full tax, how much would they save under this policy?
Band D taxpayer?
Band
I think,
A taxpayer.
Band A.
Yeah, Band A taxpayer, please. Shall I tell you? Do you want to work it out yourself? It's £34 a year. A Band G taxpayer, the most expensive properties in the borough, how much would they save under your policy? It's £102 a year.
But I'm saying a Band G taxpayer is more than twice, isn't it? It's 2.5 times.
Yeah, so the saving for a band, so your policy will effectively pass £34 a year back to the poorest pensioners in the borough, and then triple that back to the most affluent pensioners in the borough. Do you think that's classed as progressive and fair?
There are significantly more Band A taxpayers, Chairman, than there are Band G taxpayers.
That's not what I said, though. In real cash terms, you acknowledge the fact that you'll be passing back far more to the most affluent pensioners in the borough if this policy goes through. That's factually correct, isn't it, Councillor Wallace?
But those in the Band G...
I just asked if it was factually correct.
Yes, because they are paying
Thank
much
you.
higher. Yes, because they are paying much higher sums of council tax anyway, Chairman. And of course, under our proposal, all taxpayers would be paying less. All taxpayers would be paying 2% less than the rise which the Cabinet is proposing.
I know there's a lot of people that had their hands up, but I am actually going to move on now, because I think we've asked quite enough questions of the budget. But I need to bring Bruce in because he had his hand up.
Seconded, he seconded, didn't he?
Thanks, Chair. Just on the questions. There's been a number of questions on over 65, but we still need to get to clarify exactly what's been proposed by the Conservatives. Because in the resolution at the top, it states introduce a freeze in the rate for households of over 65s. In the preamble, it then says no rise at all for households where the taxpayers jointly are over 65. So are you saying it's the second part where it's only where the taxpayers are over 65?
Yes, Chairman, because it is upon the taxpayers that the council tax is levied.
So when you talk about the poor over 65s, it'll only affect the poor over 65s who are council taxpayers?
Sorry, it will only affect the over 65s who are council taxpayers. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yes, because only council taxpayers pay the council tax.
Yeah, I'll come on later on when you talk about the population of North Tyneside. However, if it's the council taxpayers, as you're well aware, if you own or rent a property jointly, you're both jointly responsible for the council tax. So is that where both council taxpayers are over 65?
Yes.
Okay. In your medium-term financial plan, you said the officers have done the figures which you agree with. So would you acknowledge that that includes a 1.99% increase for every year of the medium-term financial plan?
Well, we seem to have had discussions at the last meeting, Chairman, as to whether it was going to be 1.9 or whether it was going to be 2.99. I think we will wait and see what it's going to be next year.
You actually said there that you would hope that it would be zero moving forward?
I would always hope that it would be zero, Chairman.
So you acknowledge then if it was zero, that the predicted 27.1 million gap in the medium-term financial plan would rise to 42.2 million gap if you followed that policy?
No, Chairman, because I think a lot of figures are underestimated, notably the increase in the number of the number of properties upon which council tax can be levied.
So the figures are underestimated, so 42.2 million is an underestimation, that's fine enough.
No, the underestimation is in the growth in the amount of council tax which would be collected.
No, that's exactly right. So what would, you've already said before that, so you're saying that this 1%, this freeze on the council tax increase is going to go on in perpetuity, did you say?
I don't think it's possible for any of us here to say what can go on in perpetuity. We don't know what next year's figures will be, Chairman. This is looking at it as far as I can. I would always prefer lower rates of tax.
So if it can't, would you recognise the fact that if it was 1.99% and you did have to get rid of the freeze, the 1.99% would be for most of the borough, but the over 65s who'd had the freeze, it would be 5%?
We'll look at it next year, Chairman. I'm not going to be drawn into it.
So you're gambling with a 5% later. Thank you.
Right, I'll now invite members to debate the objection. In other words, speak, and you've got up to 5 minutes. Anyone? Councillor Spillard.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to address again the matter of the over 65s, and as someone who, as I said, my husband would qualify and I'm rapidly approaching there. I've actually always believed in fairness, and to bring in something arbitrary like that, I believe would be unfair. My experience now is that we have many people in this borough who are quite wealthy in retirement. We have large numbers of younger people with children who are struggling every day to get by. They face increasing childcare costs, increasing travel costs to get back and forward to work. And actually, if you go out and about as a retired person, all the people you see spend money in retail outlets are invariably older people. So I cannot see how this would be fair, despite the fact that I may personally benefit by it. I think the cost of administering it would be far too high for the perceived benefit, and I would actually like to see services provided, because the alternative to this is loss of services as far as I can see. So anyone who is financially suffering, who are over 65 anyway, already can benefit by reductions through other benefits. They get council support. If they're single and living in houses on their own, or anyone, they get 25% reduction on their council tax, and they can be qualifying for pension credits. So I think the benefit of the welfare system, despite my thoughts on the cuts in it, is designed to address those shortfalls, and we shouldn't then have to make additional changes to the system. To do that, it is up to central government to ensure that people who are in financial difficulties benefit, not us as a local authority to do so at the expense of others. Thank you.
Councillor Kath Davies.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make the Councillor Wallace aware that actually 65 is still a working age now. It will be for me, being a WASPy, 66 and 67 still a working age, so 65 you could be still working. Also, the unemployment figures have gone down, but there's the statistics to prove that some people are actually having 3 to 4 jobs to make ends meet. It doesn't necessarily mean because the unemployment rate's gone down that actually that's made everybody a bit more affluent. Also, there's 7,000 children in this borough that the Children and Skills report delivered to us a couple of months ago that are actually living in poverty. And I think it's quite condescending for the group to say that we can teach people how to budget and how to make healthy meals when they're actually struggling to actually pay the rent or try and feed their families. The thing is, with poor people are actually really good at budgeting because they have to be. Thank you.
Councillor Frank Lott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually feeling sorry for Councillor Brookbanks, because he's the only Conservative councillor there that sits in a ward which hasn't got a piece of seafront. What we've actually got here is a seaside sandcastles and candy floss budget, prepared for leaflets to be delivered in Monkseaton North and St Mary's in a few weeks' time, because they have a piece of seafront. The preoccupation with parking on the seafront and the coastal side streets, coupled with the proposal to raise the strategic reserve to fund capital investment in seafront regeneration, reveals their attempts to cling on electorally to what they've got at present, and the rest of the borough can go and sing. To top that, what I did notice was that out of the 150,000 that are taken from the strategic reserve, what we've learned is 100,000 of that is for toilets in St Mary's ward, and 50,000 is for pavements and streets in the whole of the rest of the borough. So I'm just wondering quite what you can get for 100,000, perhaps some little blue flags to put on the sandcastles, but you're not going to get a lot for 50,000 to spend on roads and pavements in the rest of the borough. This sandcastles and candy floss budget will be seen for what it is, because sandcastles have no foundations and candy floss has no substance. The Labour proposal is a budget for the whole of the borough. More importantly, it's a budget for the people of the borough, partly because it's been prepared with them in mind, but also I think it's fair to say that it's been prepared by them. It's through the consultation exercise that this administration's undertaken that we're proposing the people's budget for the governance of their borough. It's a budget which implements the savings made necessary by the government's underfunding of local government, but which protects the people of North Tyneside from its worst effects. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to vote in favour of the Conservative proposals, and I'll explain why. Firstly, the 1.2 million in management savings that the Conservatives have proposed, they've not convinced me that the full saving of 1.2 million is achievable, so you haven't convinced me that it's possible. It appears to me that this figure's just simply been pulled out of a hat like some sort of cheap magic rabbit in order to try and make the budget look better, so I'm not convinced that you've given it a proper consideration or any type of study. That's the same with the £300,000 reduction in the Mayor's office. Again, you've not convinced me that it's feasible at all. It seems like a figure you've just pulled out. When it comes to the bins, right, fortnightly bin collections have increased recycling rates and it's lowered the costs. However, I want to say that as a father of four, one of which is a 5-week-old baby, I kind of understand the reason by wanting to go back to weekly collections, but I must point out that it was your government's refusal to fund it. They cut the grant, so the funding's gone now. If we're going to, so I just want to say I'm not against investigating whether or not we should go back to weekly bin collections, but this should be dependent on two things. The first one being appropriate funding supplied by the government, and also government-funded initiatives to continue the positive change in recycling rates that the fortnightly collections have changed. Ultimately, you've just not convinced me that you've actually investigated your plans properly, and this suggests to me, and this is my opinion, that your budget is little more than pantomime politics trying to get headlines for a campaign leaflet in the upcoming local elections. And I believe this because you've missed the giant elephant in the room. We have had our funding savagely cut by your government. Austerity has cut off funding, and I understand why you've glossed over this, because it's slightly embarrassing for you. Cast your mind back to the 27th of November 2018 at the full council meeting. We brought a motion to this council asking for fair and sustainable funding to be given to us, and those of us who are present must ask why the Conservatives have shown such concern over the budget yet voted against that. So you specifically voted against more money for this council. And this isn't the first time the Conservatives have voted this way. During the full council meeting in November 2016, we again brought a motion asking for more funding, and the Conservatives voted against that motion. We brought another motion in November 2017, again calling for additional funding, and the Conservatives again voted against that motion. So, and before the apologists come out and make excuses for the Conservative group, let's remember that some Conservatives in other local authorities have spoken out against austerity. Lord Porter is one of the ones who spring to mind. Yet the North Tyneside Conservative group has remained steadfast in defending austerity, refusing to vote against any policy that would see austerity end to this council. To me, Chair, the budget is about producing headlines for their campaign, as I've already said. But it's also about defending the Westminster Conservative Party, and you can tell this by simply reading the introduction to the the Conservatives' proposals. The Conservatives start by claiming that their budget is set against the backdrop of a stronger, growing economy thanks to the management of the Conservative government. Well, growth is slowing. Last year we had the slowest growth since 2009. In December it was reported by The Guardian that manufacturing itself had slumped and gone reverse by 0.4%. Your government's record is so good that they've missed their own targets. The deficit was supposed to be removed by 2015 and you failed. It was then supposed to be removed by 2016, you failed, and now it's supposed to be 2020. So by your own targets, you've failed in your handling of the finances of this country. Let's look at the job market, so elegantly mentioned by the Conservatives.
You've got 1 minute left.
I know. Unemployment is down, not in this region, but nationally, unemployment is down. But the Joseph Rowntree Foundation said that the number of workers who are living in poverty has reached over 4 million. That's a rise of 500,000 in the past 5 years alone. Food bank usage has skyrocketed. Homelessness is its worst in living memory. Never in my life did I ever think that I'd ever see this level of poverty, yet the Conservative group there seem to be defending it at all opportunity. Your government has done so well that it's prompted the United Nations to investigate the 6th richest nation in the world and uncovered shocking levels of poverty and hardship, and you think that is a record for success. I have to ask
20
this,
seconds.
if the economy is working, who's it working for? Because it's not for the majority of us. I know I've digressed a little bit, so I'm simply going to finish by saying that this Conservative budget is, in my opinion, nothing but an attempt to create headlines for the upcoming election, and I urge everybody in this chamber to reject it.
Councillor Martin Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be backing this budget. Weekly waste collections were cut in 2017 after the Conservative government that they represent and support cut the grant fund, and that came in Old Tyneside. Trying to put that back in the budget seems to be very cynical without asking your government to try and replace that funding first. Reduction of the council tax increase of 1.8 million quid for this year takes £8 million out of our base budget over the next 4 years. That's an £8 million black hole. It would have to be rectified at some point in the future. I think that's reckless. The council tax freeze for bill pays over 65. That effectively passes far more back to very affluent people living in this borough who are living in houses which are £600,000, £800,000. Some of them may well need help. There are ways of getting help. I don't think that a policy which passes 30 quid back to Band A taxpayers and £110 back to Band G taxpayers works. I think it's regressive and I wouldn't support it. Additional larger dog bins, that seem to be based around a conversation Judith Wallace had in our own ward, as with some of the capital spend as well on the cafe. There's £2 million sitting here within the savings income, which is summarised as the corporate strategy spend and the increased management savings. There's absolutely no plan whatsoever to deliver it. There's no detail behind it whatsoever. You simply chuck £2 million in, and then you would expect the officers and the administration to try and deliver those additional savings and those additional promises. I think this is completely reckless. I think it's simply based around trying to show up your own collapsing support in what's left of the seats that you hold. I won't be supporting it.
Councillor O'Shea.
I was a little bit concerned by the response I got from the Leader of the Opposition about the budget and its consequential effects on future years. I think the sustainability of this budget is fraught with many, many difficulties and risks. And I suspect the budget which is being proposed is very similar to that which was proposed by the Tories in Northamptonshire, which led to almost to the bankruptcy of that council. And I think it would be against the residents of this borough to go anywhere near bankruptcy, which this budget proposes. I think it's a crackpot Tory budget, which really should be consigned to the waste bin, and I ask every member of this council to reject it. Thank you, Chairman.
I have 3 more speakers. Is there anyone else? Because you need to get your hands up. Yeah. Councillor Bell? Gary Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. From what my colleagues have said, I won't be supporting this budget either, which will be no surprise to the Conservative group. Some of the problems I've got with it is the savings through Treasury Management, even though it's £400,000, and Councillor Wallace believes this is unmanageable. So I think that's a risky strategy. It's a pity these savings, incomes and growths when they put our business cases and had risk assessments next to them, but that's not the case. I think the increase in management savings, which we're already doing about 1.25 million, and an extra 1.25 million, is not being explained as asked by the members on this side in their questions. So I think, again, that's a high-risk strategy. And the other point is the reduction in the trade union facility time, which always comes around by the Conservative group. I believe that they had very similar trade union facility time when they were in power. And I think we just, for people who think that the Labour Party is in the pot of the unions, it's not true. There's been £120 million approximately cut from this council, and we've had at this time, no industrial action because we talked to our trade unionists. The thing is as well, this £113,000 reduction, I don't know how the Conservative group will go about this, because you can't sack the trade unionists. You can't say on your bike you're away, because that would break the national conventions. So we'd have to redeploy them into another role within the council. And I'm presuming that they got redeployed into a role, somebody would have to either get made compulsory redundancy or sacked, or when we sacked, it would be compulsory redundancy or offered redundancy. So depending on the grades of the trade union officials going back into the workforce, this £113,000 saving could actually cost us money as a council, plus the fact that it could cost us money in lost working hours if the trade union side we had sort of management difficulties with them. And even their own Prime Minister, late in the day, has realised that trade unions have a prominent role in our society, and has actually started speaking to, she must have had a bit of a choke that day when she had to speak to the Lemberg Cluster and Co. About the wonderful Brexit, no deal, wonderful Tory policies, and she must have been really, that day must have been a good day for her. But, trade unions aren't about, they'll have to say that with secondary pickets and things like this. Trade unions are about education. They're about bringing people from a very low base, giving them a start in life, giving them positions so they can speak in the public and can enhance themselves, enhance their careers, and also work with management at times when it's difficult to try and get a solution. And I think that this is a regularly, it comes around every time, reducing trade union facility as getting rid of the civic car, and all the rest of it. So I can't support this because I think there's risks in it, and I don't think the answers that Councillor Wallace, nobody else has spoken from that side, but what Councillor Wallace has given us can satisfy my department, also as counterpart for the social care. I have to look after my budget as best I can, and if I, this over 65 thing, to me, if we're going to save money, let's give it to people who really need it or in desperate situations, so I can't support it.
Councillor Sarah Day.
Thank you. Just to put this into context, let's not forget that since 2010, the Conservative government has cut funding to local authorities by 49%. By 2020, it will have cut local authorities' core funding across the country by 16 billion since 2010. Now, to break that down, compared with 2010, there are now 455 fewer libraries, 1,240 fewer Sure Start centres, 600 fewer youth centres, house building has fallen to its lowest rate since the 20s, and homelessness is rising. The number of young people sleeping rough on our streets has more than doubled, and cuts to early years intervention have meant a record number of children. Some 72,000 have been taken into care last year. So I think we could be forgiven for seeing this budget as tinkering around the edges, and I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Carol Burdis.
Thank you, Chair. Reducing the participation and advocacy and engagement team would significantly impact on not only listening to all of our residents, but also supporting some of the most vulnerable residents at times of need. The team is a frontline service, not sure whether the Conservative group are aware of that, but the team is a frontline service delivering advocacy to look after children or involved in child protection, conducting and returning from missing interviews or children who are missing from our care, delivering our independent visitor project, training volunteers to befriend and look after children. All these services are statutory services. The team are also responsible for working with our council tenants, which have a responsibility towards as we are the landlords. The Participation, Advocacy and Engagement team came together under corporate strategy in 2016, which I'm sure you're aware of, having previously been 3 separate services across the organisation. Since then, there has been a reduction of staff from 20 officers, including 3 managers, to 6 officers with 1 manager. Only 1 member of the team works on engagement activity, with the other 5 working in participation or advocacy services, which all carry out statutory responsibilities for the organisation. Despite the reduction, a broad range of engagement activities have remained, including the budget engagement, the State of the Area event and the Big Community Conversation. There has also been an increase in resident satisfaction about the quality of opportunity available. I want to also refer about the communications and marketing team. They play a vital role in corporate strategy department by generating income through advertising and promoting the services of the council. The last financial year, 2017 to 18, the department was responsible for a net profit of £126,896 purely through advertising. The small team are also responsible for keeping residents and council staff informed about the services the council offer through the council magazine, the website, social media and regional press and the national press. This allows the council to be displayed on a national stage and brings more visitors and business into the borough. The team also promote activities and events through the year which bring income into the council. For example, promoting leisure centres, which we haven't closed, campaigns to recruit foster carers and adopters, adult learning and teacher training courses, retirement accommodation and supporting the environment, service in promoting recycling and reducing waste. We have already reduced the magazine by 1, and I think from the resident survey, certain age groups and types throughout the borough value the magazine. So as an elected member and representing the residents of North Tyneside, I respect the residents and won't be supporting this motion, and you, as you haven't engaged with the resident yet, and I think it's very, churlish that you haven't actually done that. You should have been out there engaging about what your proposals were going to be.
Last speaker, the elected mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out 1 or 2 things. What? No, Chair. Did Bruce wants to speak as well?
Did you? I never seen you, like. Well, seeing as Councillor Austin wants to speak, then you can speak as well.
So,
Councillor Hodgson also had his hand up.
Right, that's all right. 2 minutes. Let the mayor speak.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to put... Can I know? Right. I'd just like to point out that, yes, I did say I'd get rid of the magazines, but, we're a party that listens to people, right? And they told us how much they valued it, and that's why we kept it. That's why we kept it. In the same mandate, okay, all I'm going to say to you is that they told us that, will you do something about that dome? Will you do something about those derelict eyesores along the coast? Well, we didn't do that about the magazines, but we did do the things along the coastal strip. And I just want to point out as well, if you're so bothered and have been bothered about the coastal strip, why didn't you do anything when you were in power? And when you talk about the state of the rendezvous, we're very much aware of that, and we've got actually plans to attack that. We're actually costing the price. So why didn't you do it when you were in power? You had the right, you had the ability. It was in your power to do that, but you did nothing. You left it to us on this side of the council to put it right. And I have to tell you, the residents in this North Tyneside are really happy with what we've done along the coastal front. And I just want to say another thing as far as I'm concerned. I couldn't support this. We're a party who believes in actually equality and fairness. And if you're asking us to support a 65 thing here, so to let them off with their taxpayers, reduce theirs free or something, or take it away from them, what is it? And have to no rise for all the households where the taxpayers are over 65. I couldn't support that. That's not about fairness and equality. That is absolutely dreadful as far as I'm concerned. And for someone actually who's actually worked in areas of deprivation and know how difficult it is for people, there are much, much better ways of addressing those things about equality and vulnerability, to be quite honest. When I look through this, every year you come back with the same kind of things. There's a different thing, very often, but they're more or less general. Well, what I want to say to you, if you're so passionate about all these things, you had the chance to do them all when you were in power. So why didn't you do them? I'm struggling to think here about all the things that you write about and what you're going to do, and all the things you haven't done. I can't understand where you come from, because you had the opportunity to make North Tyneside a fantastic place to live, a fantastic place to work, and I have to tell you, we've done it. But I'm going to tell you now, I could not, no way, support this budget. Because when you do an action, you have to take the responsibility of the outcomes. And there's nowhere there that I find that you have actually considered the outcomes of those actions. Thank you, Chair.
Apologies, Councillor Hodgson, I didn't see your hand up before. So you can now have your say.
Thank you. Chairman, naturally, I support the alternative Conservative budget proposals and their financial interpretation. I have, though, particularly concerned myself with the Council's responsibilities for the care of the environment, and to this end, I asked Councillor Johnston his plans for carbon reduction, air quality improvement, and improved management of plastic waste and disposal at the last meeting. His reply was disappointing, and we on this side would proceed differently. Under carbon, the Council's role in reducing carbon emissions is not limited to a linear reduction towards the 80% target by 2050. The faster we achieve reductions, the better. It appears in any case that the timescale will need to be reduced to 80% by 2030.
Can I just ask, Chair, is this actually in relation to the budget? Because there's no items in the budget in relation to that from the opposition side.
I think my colleagues are correct. We're addressing your objections, not the Labour budget. So maybe she's asking the question in the wrong slot.
Chair, point of order as well. I think, remember last time I answered the question out of courtesy to Councillor Hodgson, not because it was in the budget. The questions he asked were not included in the budget. I answered the question out of courtesy, not because they were in the budget. So
do you have another question or sorry, another comment?
I have lots of comments, Chairman. I've got a view with the Council, urging the Council to take a more active role in guarding the environment. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, it would have been nice if it had been in your budget.
It is in the budget, Chairman. It is in the budget.
Councillor Austin, even though you have the right as a seconder, it would have helped if I'd seen your hand.
I reserve the right to speak, Chair, right at the beginning.
That doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be invited to speak unless you put your hand up, or I'll allow you to speak at this particular point.
Thank you, Chair. The Conservative Group's budget saves all North Tyneside's council taxpayers money, with a much smaller rise than that which the Mayor is proposing, just 1% as opposed to 3%. Further, we are offering an additional discount to the most elderly members of our communities. Councillor Rankin's concern that Band A taxpayers would only save £34 a year is curious, when he supports the Mayor's budget, which will clobber them and everyone else with a 3% increase. It's bizarre. Only our budget will actually help the poorest over 65s. We have shown that we are in touch with and prepared to act on what our residents want, and that the Mayor and Labour Party simply pay lip service to consultation. That has been admirably proved tonight by Councillor Rankin, who says that a 1% rise is reckless. Why did you consult on it then? 1%, 2%, 3%. Presumably the Mayor never had any intention to accept the residents' views that they would prefer a 1% rise. So much for the Mayor's claim to be a listening Mayor. I asked a number of questions at the last meeting concerning the Council's budget engagement process. Of those that were answered, most elicited extremely generalised responses. However, at that meeting, the Cabinet Member for Engagement did concede that, when residents were asked the question, should council tax rise by 1%, 2% or 3%, a substantial majority voted for the 1% rise, around 2/3 of those responding online. This was despite the irresponsible and frankly ridiculous scare stories put out at the start of the consultation process that £41 million would need to be saved from the Council's budget. Perhaps the residents have learned to take Labour's stories with a big pinch of salt. After all, if their predictions on the amount which would need to be saved were so wrong, why would residents have any confidence in taking Labour's advice in the last few weeks of the process regarding what would be an appropriate council tax increase? We heard from Councillor Glinden that the Mayor's budget statement was incorrect and that unemployment was rising. Councillor Davis appeared to disagree. Who's right, the Mayor or the Cabinet Member for Finance? I recall that the Cabinet Member for Engagement also told us that the residents hadn't really come up with a way of balancing the budget if council tax only increased by 1%. Of course, as elected members, it's really up to us to balance the council's budget. The Mayor was either unable or unwilling to balance her budget based on the 1% council tax rise our residents voted for. So much for the so-called People's Budget. But fortunately, the Conservative Group has shown that it is perfectly possible if you have the will. We have produced a balanced and legal budget which directs residents' money into the services they've told us that they value and into dealing with the issues which concern them the most. To allay Councillor Newman's concerns, the finance officers signed off our budget as legal and balanced. Is Councillor Newman doubting the officers' professional advice? We are dealing with issues like the state of our roads and pavements. Our budget puts extra money into dealing with this problem, in addition to the extra funds of £42 million recently given to local councils by the government. Refuse collection. The Mayor pledged in her past election literature that she would safeguard our weekly refuse collections. She broke that pledge last year and has made no attempt to reinstate the weekly collections this year. Anecdotally, we are hearing about and indeed seeing an increase in flight.
Got a minute left.
Thank you. I've spoken to residents struggling to fit a fortnight's waste into their bin, even though they're recycling everything they can. This especially applies to residents with young families. We've had cases of residents' bins being misused, as well as communal bins. If the Mayor wouldn't keep her pledge, we will keep ours. Our budget shows that even with a lower council tax, we can still bring back the weekly bins. The regeneration of the seafront in Monkseaton and St Mary's, our budget has identified funding for further regeneration. Residents in Monkshaven deserve that. It's sad that the Labour group have ridiculed the idea that the stretch of seafront bordering St Mary's and Monkshaven North should be regenerated. Sand castles and candy floss. Pathetic, arrogant and extremely disrespectful to the residents of those two wards. Pardon?
Can we stop
That's
the
extremely
argument?
rude. But yeah, it's kind of what I'm saying.
I must admit, just before he interrupted, sorry, Councillor Lott interrupted, your time was up. So 5 minutes is up. Now move on to Councillor Pickard, who again I must apologise for. I didn't actually see your hand up.
I thought it was one of the three when you said it. That's why I went. I mean, there's so much that is wrong with the Conservative motion that they're putting forward here, and that it's really hard to know where to start or what to miss out. But if I tackle some of the main points, they seem to have this aversion to discussions with trade unions. I mean, this is how businesses and councils work. You discuss things with your employees, you don't dictate to them and say what you need to do. Now, you'll not always agree. Sometimes we'll agree with them, sometimes we won't, but most of the time we come to working arrangements that are fit for purpose that we can all go with. We know that the Tories keep introducing trade union legislation. It's interesting. In the 2016 legislation that they introduced with the update in 2017, which requires every council to declare the amount of time, money to spend and the amount of time to spend on trade union facilities. In North Tyneside, we represent an average number for this size of authority, not high at all. And when you come to the number of reps, the percentage spent on pay, because of them, we're in the lower middle quartile of the facility time. And if you look on the council website, obviously somebody's been trying to find out about what's going on in industrial action. A question in their freedom of information says, how much industrial action has there been in North Tyneside? Very quick answer just says 0. And that's because we work with the trade unions on major issues. For instance, we still have to represent people who are seconded into the Capita and into Angie. And let's not forget, the Conservatives gave away £10 million of taxpayers' money that they are keeping as their profit to go to their shareholders under the agreement that they actually made. So don't talk to us about financial security. But if we actually look at what they've put up before, they're actually setting a massive bill for the future. They're saying today there's a small saving, but a massive bill for the future. Scaremongering, there's nothing scaremongering about the rules and the procedures that the officers have shown us, because you said, do you doubt the officers' figures? 27.1 million to fine with our budget. If there's not a 1.99% increase, which you said you wouldn't want, it would go by a further 15 million. So it is true, it's 42.2 million. If what you've said tonight gets actually put forward. And if we look at the position of people over 65, if people over 65 are finding it hard to find the extra cash, why then doesn't the government raise our pension to at least the average level of those in Europe? We're paid the lowest level in Europe. The government sets us a limit where they say, oh, you're so poor at that level, we will pay the council tax support for you. So why don't you ask the government to raise the level on the council tax support so you can earn more money or you can have more money in actual savings? There's 8,179 of those in North Tyneside, and none of those 8,000 will get any benefit from this proposal to freeze at 65 at all, because they're already on the benefit. However, the only 12,500 households are based on a guesstimate, but you've actually said where it's joint owners on the house thing, that unless it's both of them over 65, they won't get the money. That's probably going to reduce down again. So looking at a small number of people in the borough who are going to get a benefit on the backs of the other people in the borough, particularly some of the more poorer people who are under 65. Because it's worth noting that a single claimant under 25 on job seekers allowance and a single claimant receiving earnings and support allowance, that is because they're so ill they can't work, they will all have to pay the percentage increase in full that there is here tonight on their pension. So once again, the Conservatives are trying to support the rich on the backs of the poor. As I said, that person on education, on employment support allowance will have to pay the full percentage. Our budgets are struggling to find money for the demand and services for people over 65. Yet what they're actually saying is they're not the ones who are going to have to pay towards it, even if they're a millionaire and working and have a house full of children who are working age as well, but they're going to take the money off people under 25 who are trying to start their careers and off on other people on education support allowance. As for the issue of the environment, don't think you're the ones who are going to charge for the bins. You're the ones who are going to close libraries, you're going to close parks. You're the ones who wanted to reduce stuff. And as
20 seconds.
As the Mayor said, why did you do it when you're in charge? Overall, it's a budget of disaster that's been put forward. What it does is only delays the fact of people having a bit of respite for 1 year, but doubles and trebles the bills in future years for those people, unless they can guarantee those resources are there. And unfortunately, their government won't guarantee those resources.
Can I now invite Councillor Glindon to respond?
I want to come to the unemployment point first, because this information I've got, the information comes out in January. And when this report was written, it would have been based on January 2018 figures. The figures that have come out today, well, I got them yesterday, is 2019 figures. Unemployment has risen in the North Tyneside. You can find that on the Parliament website if you want to go there. Chair, on this side of the Chamber, it's obvious from what people have been saying, will not be supporting the Conservative objection. We feel there is no financial stability. It could be a risk to future years, increasing the amount of savings that would have to be made. A reduction of the council tax to 1%, although they've allowed this in their proposed savings, does not say if it's a 1 year or long-term financial plan, or fits in with our long-term financial plan. I know Councillor Wallace did say that she would like to do it future years, but this is just a 1 year budget. But, we are not looking at 1 year, we're looking at 4 years. There also must be a way, which I pointed out before, the government has advised all councils to put the council tax up by 2.98%. This is to help with the reduction of the grant. They're holding back from all councils. Even though they've said today, this is news today, hot off the press, they've actually made in January a £14.9 billion surplus. And they're still starving. And apparently they made a surplus in December as well. But what they said today is that's going to go towards Brexit. I knew I'd get Brexit in sometime tonight. Government advises that austerity is over. I mean, Mrs May has already said that. But they continue on a path to hurt the most vulnerable people of society. The council tax freeze for the over 65s, it was mentioned from across there that it'll help the poorest. Unfortunately, it also helps the rich ones as well. There's no such thing as dividing people unless you go to look at the earnings. In my opinion, it'd be hard to administer, because you're talking about 5 extra staff to set it up. The increase in management savings is a bland statement which has been said by a couple of my colleagues here today and myself. Got no substance behind it. As I said before, we have over the years reduced management and put resources into frontline services to try to keep these overstretched services going. And I thank officers within this council for doing that. They've done a really, really good job. The savings through Treasury management are also a risk. It seems it was relying on reduced borrowing rates, which we think time will tell, but at this moment in time, we don't think we can use them anymore. It's an objection, in all it's an objection without substance. Like I've previously said, we will not be supporting it. At the same time, because I'm going to say this many times tonight, can I thank the staff for helping us throughout this process. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the vote, and it's a named vote. Yeah.
Voting for or against the objection. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Austin. Councillor Gary Bell. Councillor Linda Bell, Councillor Karen Bolger, Councillor Trish Brady, Councillor Sean Brockbank, Councillor Pamela Brooks, Councillor Brian Burdis, Councillor Carol Burdis, Councillor Joanne Cassidy, Councillor Karen Clark, Councillor Debbie Cox, Councillor Stephen Cox, Councillor Naomi Craven, Councillor Eddie Dark, Councillor Linda Dark, Councillor Kath Davis, Councillor Sarah Day, Councillor David Drummond, Councillor Peter Early, Councillor Ray Glindon, Councillor Sandra Graham, Councillor Muriel Green, Councillor Margaret Hall, Councillor John Harrison, Councillor Ed Hodson, Councillor Janet Hunter, Councillor John Hunter, Councillor Nigel Huscroft, Councillor Carl Johnson, Councillor Joe Kerwin, Councillor Karen Lee, Councillor Frank Lott, Councillor Wendy Lott, Councillor Gary Madden, Councillor Maureen Madden, Councillor Paul Mason, Councillor Pamela McIntyre, Councillor David McMeekin, Councillor Anthony McMullen, Councillor Janice Mole, Councillor Tommy Mulbennett,
Against.
Councillor Andy Newman,
Against.
Councillor Pat Oliver, Councillor Kate Osborne, Councillor John O'Shea, Councillor Norman Percy, Councillor Stephen Phillips, Councillor Bruce Pickard, Councillor Martin Rankin, Elected Mayor Norma Redfern, Councillor Margaret Reynolds, Councillor Willie Samuel, Councillor Leslie Spillard, Councillor John Sterling, Councillor Matthew Thirlaway, Councillor Judith Wallace.
Scores on the doors.
6-4 and 49 against.
The votes were 49 against and 6-4. Therefore, the motion has been defeated. Or the objection, sorry, has been defeated. Can I now invite members to speak on the substantive motion? And again, you have 5 minutes to speak. No one wants to speak? Oh, right. Councillor Wallace. Just don't get your hand up, you'll not be speaking.
Chairman,
sorry, Councillor Wallace.
It's okay, Chairman. Chairman, yet again this year we're being presented by the Mayor and Cabinet with a budget imposing a hefty tax rise on residents. This budget, if accepted, will mean residents are paying 18% more over the last 4 years, and that's excluding the police and fire elements. Budget is going for the biggest rise which is possible without having a referendum locally. It's also clear that the headlines which appeared last autumn were really quite alarmist, suggesting much higher levels of saving than have proved to be the case, and it's questionable how useful the engagement sessions were when tax rises were not really being discussed. A lot of them were before tax rises were being specified at all. We note also that the Council's spending power is actually increasing. It continues to increase year on year, and it's interesting that those figures were omitted from the final report. Core spending rises year on year. £161 million in 17-18 was the figure, £165 million for core spending this year, and £167 million next year. We note with concern some areas of expenditure, particularly on compromise agreements with staff who leave. These non-disclosure agreements, or gagging clauses they're sometimes described, have involved very big sums of money. For example, £133,000 in 2 months of this year, nearly £90,000 last year, and staggeringly almost £250,000 in 2015. Residents may well wonder the purpose of such non-disclosure agreements, involving, as they do, numerous constraints and precluding the employee from using much employment legislation. Residents may well be wondering what there is to hide. It seems that sometimes staff may go under such agreements, and yet other employees are then engaged. We note also that there are significant sums of Section 106 money paid by builders and developers as part of their planning permissions, which do not seem to have been used yet. This covers tens of thousands of pounds, for example, in cash for play sites, environmental works, highways, etc. It seems to us that these are missed opportunities with the borough's resources. We cannot support this budget because the Mayor and Cabinet are not making best use of the resources available in our view, and taxpayers and residents are being clobbered with a massive increase. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Having already pointed out the many ways in which the Conservative budget proposals would have been better both for residents' services and residents' pockets, I cannot support Labour's budget. Labour have chosen to impose the highest possible rise in council tax. They didn't have to. We have shown that by producing a balanced budget with only a 1% rise, we have shown that, by producing a balanced budget with only a 1% rise. Labour have chosen to ignore the views of the majority of those who took part in the consultation. The Mayor's favoured option was clearly always to increase council tax by as much as possible. Labour have chosen to spend yet more money on trade union facility time. They could have saved the weekly bin collections instead, as the Mayor pledged, but they are happy to renege on that pledge to keep the unions happy. We all know what really matters to residents when you're on the doorstep is the state of their roads and pavements, a good refuse service that meets their needs, keeping the area free of litter and dog mess, and of course the continued regeneration of the coast along to St Mary's Island. All of which our budget would have provided, and all of which the Mayor's budget singularly fails to do. Despite the alarmist headlines last year about £41 million of cuts, which of course turned out to be untrue, the Council's spending power has in fact increased. So Labour could have produced a budget which both saved services and saved residents money. They chose not to, and from the arrogant, fatuous and frankly condescending comments from some Labour members about the regeneration of the coast, they clearly have no intention of either listening to or respecting the residents.
I hadn't realised you'd finished there. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. While the Conservative budget was financially reckless and completely lacking in environmental leadership, the Mayor's and Labour Group budget is the complete opposite. Against the backdrop of the national financial situation, which has seen the Conservative government hand over £120 million of cuts to North Tyneside in the last 6 years, we fronted the difficult financial decisions the last Tory administration shirked, while still leading the way on investment in North Tyneside, regenerating our borough after the Tory administration failed to do so. Listen to our residents on environmental, transport and parking concerns. In the last year, we've improved the recycling rate by 10%, reduced the level of household weight by 12%, and took 14,000 miles of HGV and LGV vans off the road. Seen record levels of recycling, all of which improve air quality and environmental sustainability across the borough. We've listened to residents on environmental crime and have extended our highly successful environmental wardens and CCTV vans. We'll introduce the environmental team, which will enable real-time responses to environmental issues across the borough, while not moving resources elsewhere. We want to introduce more and bigger bins across the borough, not just half a bin for each ward. On roads and pavements, Tories propose to spend an additional 50k on roads and pavements. While the Mayor and Cabinet's plan has £3.2 million in the local transport plan, we put an additional £2 million to spend on roads and pavements across the borough. On parking, the Conservative propose to change the fuel shop permit for the few, while we have listened to residents' concerns and have brought forward free parking right across the borough after 6 p.m. Extending our free parking offer further, meaning you can now park it free right across the borough in our town centres and in our coastal area. We're also supporting our families and businesses at the coast, and despite record visitor numbers at the coast, we are extending our £3 day parking across the foreshore. This is a budget which works for the whole boroughs, which listens to residents' concerns, which takes action on environmental issues, which takes actions on roads and pavements and parking, and which is financially sustainable long term.
Councillor Peter Hurley.
Thanks, Chair. I would like to commend this budget to members. Once again, in the face of annual savage cuts from central government, the Cabinet has produced a budget which maintains frontline council services for the residents of North Tyneside. It protects services for our most vulnerable citizens, the elderly, those with special needs and vulnerable children. Existing culture and leisure services such as parks, leisure centres and libraries are preserved. It continues to promote innovation and efficiency across the services the Council delivers, whilst maintaining a high quality of delivery, to the extent that in some areas, such as children's services, North Tyneside Council is recognised as a national leader and can market their best practice approach to other authorities. Contrast this then with the objections tabled by the opposition, which were aimed largely at increasing spending in only selected areas of the borough, or would by and large benefit only those residents who are least in need of financial help. Their proposals around council tax in particular, were they to be adopted, would lead to an ever-increasing financial black hole in future years. The Cabinet's budget proposals are sensible, measured, and will mean the continued delivery of high-quality services to the residents of North Tyneside, and I urge members to support the budget proposals.
Councillor Willie Samuel.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say that I find the Tory statements this evening frankly astonishing. In the face of all evidence to the contrary, the fact is that central government has been reducing support to local government for the last 10 years. It's a well-known fact. It's not disputed, and yet we hear this presentation that there's lots of money sloshing about. The council's got more money to spend than ever, and it just flies in the face of reality. You're really being the low tax party in favour of small government should take ownership of the fact that you're imposing austerity and reductions on councils rather than trying to pretend that somehow that's not the case. Some of your proposals, we've gone through £350,000, which you reckon is the cost to reintroduce weekly bin collections. Doesn't even cover a whole year. Doesn't cover the cost of increased fuel. Doesn't cover any of the costs of of bringing it back in. You talk about a tax freeze, which you haven't even thought out properly.
Chairman, this is not about the Mayor's budget.
Pardon?
I don't think the Speaker is speaking about the Mayor's budget at the moment. He seems to have gone back to our objection.
Well, I think he's comparing things.
I am actually comparing our budget to yours, and I shall come on to explain why ours is far better if you'll give me the chance. Simply going to comment, the final comment I'll make on your budget proposals then, to keep it brief so we can all get home, is to talk about, we talked about we'd underestimated the income from new homes which would be available to spend, which I find frankly astonishing given that you spend most of your time opposing new house building whenever it takes place and suggesting that we shouldn't be building more houses. Which is completely inconsistent with what you say. You've left a huge black hole in your budget of unspecified savings, but I shall move on. Councillor Austin gave the game away, particularly when she talked about the areas that it would benefit from, when she talked about Monkseaton and St Mary's. That's what your proposals are about. In contrast, we put forward a budget which I'm proud to support as a coastal councillor, which improves services for the entire borough in the face of central government cuts which continue year by year in an unsustainable way. We have maintained services, we have maintained libraries, we have maintained sports centres, and we provide services across the borough, which I am very proud of. And I find your budget proposals are a disgrace. Ours are magnificent for this authority, and I commend them to you.
Councillor John Sterling.
Yes, I'm of a like mind to everybody that's been speaking. Austerity has put a hell of a sort of thing on this council. Basically, although you try to ignore it, it has been happening over the years. Money has been taken out of the council, and it's cuts by central government that's actually done it. Well, that's not what I want to concentrate on. What I want to concentrate on is, in spite of all that, the successes that this council has achieved. When Norma first became mayor, there was eyesores on the coast down the front. You had all of them buildings sort of been left for years. The High Point, what they call the other one down the road there, they were all there, and you'd done nothing about them. You'd had 4 years and you'd done nothing about them. We went in, we've sort of got them all sorted out. I remember your last time before you actually packed in and got thrown out was we're talking about libraries. and we had somebody sitting over on the other side. You were going to close the library, some of the libraries, and all you could get out of them was it's a rolling programme. It's a rolling programme. Are you going to close libraries? It's a rolling programme. And that's all we could get out of you, you know. You were going to close libraries. We have kept the libraries open.
Can I ask, is this budget or we're dealing with last year's budget?
Just tell you how good what budget is, Tommy.
Oh, right. Well, you've got me totally confused.
You know, we have not closed leisure centres. That was another thing that was going to go, remember? They were going to go out and privatise the leisure centres. That's something that you made a mistake with as well. What we've got now is, and it was something Ed wanted for years, increased recycling rates. We knew that when it went to fortnightly bin collection, the recycling rates would go up. And that's what's happened. 11% have went up, Ed. And that's something you wanted, so I can't understand how you voted for that budget. But basically, 11% of recycling rates went up. There's less money, there's less rubbish coming into the borough because people are thinking more about it now. And basically, when you look at the cost of actually putting it in the landfill, which is £122 a tonne, by the way, and recycling is only £15 a tonne, you can see where the savings are going to be. And that's something we're all asking for. We've also made savings in the carbon footprint by our LED programme in the buildings and in the street lighting, so that's all went. And this is just some of the things that we've done. We've actually done a lot of, and there's a lot of success here, and the people of North Tyneside understand that, and they can see that things are happening. With you, it was moribund, nothing happened. And what was your answer? Privatise large parts of the council without putting any KPIs or anything in, just before you got thrown out. And that was your answer, and it's been a problem ever since. I will be supporting our budget.
Councillor Carol Burris.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I'll be supporting this budget because this ensures that we will listen to the residents of the borough and not pretend like the people on the opposite side of the chamber this evening. Because I have to say, one of the things that you have done tonight, you've referred to why you come up with that figure for your council tax. What you didn't do was you didn't look at the other information that you did receive about the face-to-face. And the face-to-face, the majority of people, and you ignored what I'd said in chamber last time, the people who are on face-to-face, they were quite happy with having a larger increase in council tax to ensure that they preserved services, and that was where their priorities were, and the face-to-face, they prioritised the services. Now, when we look at what you're talking about on the 100,000, you know, like going back down and what they were, what you want to do on the lower rate of council tax, I have to say, what happened there? You looked at the figure, you didn't look at the full document, did you? And that was a shame. Our engagement is a true engagement. The figures were there for you to see, but you've decided to manipulate them. And I'll be like my other colleagues, I'll guarantee that will be on a leaflet that we have gone against that. And I'm telling you now, you need to write it down because the 2.99% did actually come from face-to-face engagement with our residents. You don't listen to the residents. You haven't even gone out and done that. What did you do in 2012 on budget engagement? Our budget engagement is improving every year, and I don't have a problem coming every year here and talking to you about our engagement. I also invite yourselves every year to come and take part in budget engagement or come up with some solutions or ideas, and you've not done it once. You're there to sit and criticise. So I'm definitely, I've got a lot more in my portfolio that would cover that I'm going to support this budget for, but I just keep thinking, well, the only thing you grapple onto on engagement is the residents, and you don't listen to them. So shame on you. I'll be supporting this budget.
Councillor Leslie Spillard.
Thank you, Chair. This is the 9th year I've taken part in budget discussions, and yes, the first few years we had a different mayor. But certainly my experience in the years that I have been supporting the Mayor and the Cabinet, I know that every cut, everything we have to do is a blow to us, and it's only done because we have no option. We try every way we can to support and protect our residents. And of course, forefront of that has got to be statutory duty to the vulnerable, children and young people, adult social care. The cost of that, as we know, is phenomenal, and it means we have to be very creative with what is left. Despite all that, we have managed to do so much good work in North Tyneside. And I have to say, you just have to read the letters page in the local News Guardian to see how the mood of people at the coast has changed over the last couple of years with the work on the Dome and the seafront. People, I recognise names who were ready to criticise us constantly are now praising this council for what they've done. Newcomers in the last couple of years, just in the last couple of weeks, have said how proud and lucky they are to live in North Tyneside. And yes, we've kept our libraries, and yes, we've kept our leisure centres opened. But there's always a cost to that, but we count every cost and make hard decisions because we have no choice. As far as future coastal regeneration, because of cuts by this government, the only option for the council is to look for funding elsewhere. For instance, Heritage Lottery. But also, like every other organisation across the country, we are chasing less and less money. It is harder each year to get those funding bids successfully, as happened with St Mary's recently. And there's lots of voluntary organisations also trying to get money to do the work they want to do. So it isn't easy, and I know the Mayor has got those plans that they would like to carry out, but again, with cuts, that makes it much more difficult. And I know the Council magazine seems to exercise the Tories quite a lot, but what I would like to remind them is there are still considerable numbers of people in this borough who are not online. So the information that they find in that magazine is really important. But it's also important to our voluntary sector, but because not only does it publicise the work they do, it also publicises the voluntary opportunities there are for people. It gives older people who perhaps retired opportunities to live a fulfilling life. It gives young people opportunities to get skills and experience which will help them in future plans and aspirations for them. So the cost of that council magazine is actually cheap at the price because it brings a lot to this borough. It's not just something to put in the bin and be discarded. So yes, I would like to see more that we could spend money on, but we know it's not possible. And therefore I will be supporting this wholeheartedly because I think we've done a good job over the last few years and we'll continue to do that for as long as we're able.
Can I just ask people to actually identify if they want to speak, because at the present moment I've got about 6 people, and the way things is going, if people don't indicate to speak, we won't be actually asking them to speak. So, yes, I know there's some who've already indicated. That's why I'm asking others to indicate. So can I now move on to Councillor Hodgson?
Thank you, Chairman. I tried to speak earlier about the environment. On page 20, there's a section 2.8, Environment and Sustainability. It's 5 lines long, and it concerns itself with carbon reduction, carbon footprint and the carbon reduction. And there's a bit more to the environment and sustainability than that, I think. I particularly concern myself with the Council's responsibilities for the care of the environment over the years, and to this end I did ask Councillor Johnson some questions at the last meeting, and I think his answers were a little disappointing. Under carbon, for example, carbon reduction, which is absolutely vital, the Council's role in reducing carbon emissions is not limited to a steady annual proportionate rate. it really is it's a dash to achieve something. We really must make as much progress there as possible. In fact, I think the international target of 80% by 2050 will soon be changed to 80% by 2030. I think we should be proceeding along, doing everything we can to reduce carbon as fast as we can. And in particular, of course, that's a street lighting program, which Councillor Sterling mentioned, of course, was introduced by us some time ago. That needs to be accelerated as far as we can. I think we've made some savings in transport reduction, that's good, and I think we should be looking, for example, for more staff working from home and so on and so on. On air quality, we note the proposal to impose London-style road charging on the coast road and within Newcastle for diesel engine and other polluting vehicles. Well, we'll see how that goes, but we would certainly, we've suggested before, dispose of the mayor's diesel car. We think that was a very unfortunate purchase indeed, and replace it with the electric engine vehicle as soon as one is available. We note the plan to re-engine buses to standard Euro 6, which again Councillor Sterling has justified on the grounds of cleanliness, but in fact these are diesel engine vehicles and they're still filthy. We question that programme very much, and we would certainly, if we were in power, we would re-examine the plan to re-engine those buses at enormous expense. We think our money might be best directed elsewhere. We note again the Mayor's support for the regional energy from waste plant in East Houghton.
Councillor Hodgson,
yeah.
There's none of this in the budget. There was 5 lines.
5 lines?
Yeah.
Dealing with the environment.
You're making assumptions because, first of all, the Mayor wasn't on the planning committee that approved the power unit, so therefore, how do we know that the Mayor supported it?
Well, I have asked a question since.
Chair, can I raise a point of order? Because, and the point of order is that the member's given misinformation. I, on behalf of the Mayor, when she wasn't here, twice answered questions to Councillor Hodgson. We twice informed that the Mayor did not support, was not on the planning committee, and did try to, everything she could, that she had nothing to do in favour. He knows that. He's been told it at least twice, therefore he can only be doing it for mischievous means, and you should stop doing it straight away, and I believe it should be an issue raised to the standards.
Chairman, can I just explain?
You can try to explain.
That proposal was supported by officers of this council, supported by the planning committee, all of which are part of this council. Right? A decision was taken in which that plant should be approved.
The planning committee supported the thing, not the Mayor. You yourself sat on the planning committee, and as a result, the vote was in favour of the planning at that particular time. So even though you actually voted against it, you were still part of the process, and therefore, once it became a planning decision, it then was a council decision.
Exactly.
But you cannot say that it was an individual person's decision.
No, indeed.
Just as or a political party's decision. And on the same line, the car, which you have just stated was the Mayor's car, is not the Mayor's car, it's the council's car. And it is used by many people within the council, both civic events, the Mayor's events, and indeed officers when it is necessary to go to places. And it's a lot cheaper than actually getting a taxi.
Chairman, I'm not sure what point you're making. The council own a diesel engine car. It was purchased at a time when the whole world has turned their backs on buying diesel vehicles, when manufacturers are pulling away from manufacturing them. It is a bad decision by the council. The head of the council is the Mayor.
It was a decision made 2 years ago when there was a problem with diesel cars, but the whole world wasn't against diesel cars. Now, I'm not prepared to argue with you on the point.
Good.
If you can pull your argument to this budget, then go ahead. If not, then we'll move on to the next speaker.
Chairman, could I just make the point on section 2.8? The hit.
He hasn't, not yet, no. I think there must be a football match on tonight. Come on, you've got 1 minute and 45 seconds. Hurry up.
I'm dealing with section 2.8 of the proposal, Chairman. Under carbon, we would make some changes. Under plastics, I think this is, this item's arisen very strongly recently. Under David Attenborough, we really need to do more. And a lot of ideas are floating around. The fairly minor idea of getting rid of knives, forks and spoons last year is minor. I think we need to do more for the river, draining the river, which falls under our control. I'd like to see more of that happening.
And a lot of people opposite are talking through this, and it's extremely rude, I think.
But
This does not relate to the budget.
Chairman, I'm just dealing with the three major matters.
Yes, but there's none of them in the budget.
Chair, any amendments that would be made on this spend would have been in the opposition budget. That's already been voted
that
down.
might be the case, but they're not in the budget. So can we move on to the next speaker? Can I move on to Councillor Newman?
Thank you, Chair. You'll be happy that this is not going to be as long as the last one. I am going to say that I'm in favour of the budget, obviously, because unlike the Conservatives' budget, it's a budget that isn't paying petty party politics with the budget of North Tyneside. That's my main reason for voting in favour of this budget. It's basically our budget is not trying to play games with our residents. It's not trying to play games with the services that they rely on. It's a serious attempt to deal with austerity. That's the ultimate line here. We would love to produce a budget that says there would be no council tax rise, that we'd put dog bins on every street, or that we'd build 20 leisure centres. We would love to do loads of things, but your government has prevented us from doing this. And I just have to go back to the meetings I described in the last time I spoke, November 2016, November 2017, November 2018. There's 3 occasions where your government has completely and utterly ignored all the calls from this council that austerity is causing problems, that it's causing untold misery, that our budget can't handle this. So our budget is a serious attempt, unlike your own. I do want to say that, Councillor Austin, I never once said that your budget wasn't legal. What I said was I don't think it was achievable. I don't think that it was it wasn't feasible. There was no evidence presented to us that those savings were possible. 50% of your savings came from 1.25 million came from management. You didn't produce anything that would prove that it was possible to do that. Whereas our budget, it's achievable. It's a budget that we can do. And not only that, it's a budget that, as many people have said, protects our services. The leisure centres are remaining open, the libraries are remaining only, and there's infrastructure. I've got to say that I don't live on the coast, and I don't represent a coastal area. I live in Howden, and I represent the Northumberland ward, which are all urban areas. I've got infrastructure work going on in my ward. I've had roads resurfaced. I've had paving stones replaced. Next year, the residents of Main Crescent are going to benefit from a parking scheme that we're going to build. So this budget is designed for every resident of every ward. It's not designed for party politics, which is what your budget was designed for, because you didn't produce any type of feasibility study to prove that it was achievable. And that's the biggest problem with your budget. This budget, as I say, it's designed for everybody. It's the best budget we can do under the terrible austerity that your government has levelled onto us, and it is a serious attempt to do the best we can with the resources available, unlike yours.
Councillor Brockbank, did I see your hand up?
You did. Thank you very much, Chair. You'll be pleased to know I'll keep this brief.
It won't surprise anybody that I'm not going to support the Labour budget. I think as a Conservative, I'm of the philosophical view that the best way for people to spend the money is to keep as much of it as humanly possible and keep the state to a reduced minimum when it has to intervene in people's lives. I'm also a great believer in democracy, and when people speak and when residents speak, that not only should a tokenistic activity of yes, we're listening, and then the exact countervailing action being taken, I actually think that we're here at the behest of residents, and we should take forward their requests. I think this budget, for me, the largest possible rise without a referendum, represents an assault on local residents' right to spend their own hard-earned cash, but also, more widely, an assault on the principles of local democracy, which for me, I've heard an awful lot about engagement tonight and listening, but 3,000 homes being built next to my ward, not one resident said they wanted it, weren't listened to. Council tax rises, people said they want the lower rate, not listened to. Weekly bin collections, people said they want to keep them, not listened to. So my objection primarily is democratic about the Labour budget. I don't think it is democratic. I don't think it is a true reflection of the residents' views. And I think there have been small numbers of people who have driven this ideological budget when there's a perfectly sensible Conservative budget which is legal, which has been costed, which would avoid all this unnecessary increase in council tax which has been proposed. And for that reason, Chair, I certainly won't be supporting it.
Councillor Bolger? No? I thought I seen your hand up. Oh, Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to pass an observation that I'm surprised at the stance that our colleagues across the floor are adopting this evening, largely in light of the fact that Sir John Major was here quite recently, and I think he would have been more supportive of what we're trying to achieve here than they are. One of the points that he made himself that was called for, that were urgent action was called for to protect the North East economy, and I think this is a classic example of where our colleagues across the floor seem to have less empathy than maybe some of their more eminent and wise colleagues of the past, because even they seem to be in support of the kind of policies and the kind of ideas and innovations that we're trying to bring into play here to protect the most vulnerable in our society. So John said that the North East and other regions away from London had not had their fair share of attention or funding from many successive governments. And I suggest that's why we should be supporting what we're trying to achieve this evening.
I have a small number of people left, and as anybody else needs to indicate, right? No? Then the last three speakers, right? First of all, Joe Kerwin. Sorry, Councillor Kerwin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I just wanted to speak because a lot of people have been mentioning how the Tory budget is a budget for Monkseyton and the coast. Well, our budget is also a budget for Monkseyton and the coast. We're protecting the local Monkseyton Library, we're protecting Waves Leisure Centre in Monkseyton, we're investing in roads, we're investing in pavements, we're investing in the environment, and we're not only doing that in Monkseyton, we're doing it across the borough. Ours is a budget for everyone.
Councillor Bruce Pickard.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this budget, which is a budget for all of the people of North Tyneside, not just a select few. And I think it's interesting to say then we've had to put the council tax up, and in previous years we had to put the adult social care precept on as well. That's described as hefty council tax rises at a time when core spending has gone up. However, it's interesting that really the core spending is a self-tax on the residents of North Tyneside. And I quote from the core spending power explanatory note, which is on the government website, which explains how to work our core spending power out. Very clear, the council tax requirement assumes that local authorities increase their Band D council tax in line with a 3% referendum limit in 2019-20. So it's very clear. Also, the potential additional council tax available for adult social care assumes authority set the adult social care precept to the maximum allowable level given their past decisions. Now, given in the last few years they've opposed our budget every time, and this year was their last chance to put in the adult social care. Remember they wouldn't do it last time, they said they were going to do it this time? That means it would be £10 million less in our resources now as an authority because of their decisions over the last couple of years. So they talk about fantasy figures, but there are fantasy figures in their particular budget. They talk about non-disclosure, but there was nearly £250,000 paid out in non-disclosure bills to the council staff, while Councillor Wallace was in charge of finance there. And the reason she probably doesn't know about that is the same as I don't know about because I head of HR, because under the council's constitution, it is the responsibility of officers to negotiate those either after tribunals or when people are leaving. And how could they then tell you? Because then they break the terms of the disclosure notice that they've actually got. So if you want to make an issue out of that, include yourself in that as well, because that was spent when you were there. And if we look at the capital, well, at least our capital scheme, we've proven what we want to do for the authority. And if you look at the fact that they assume there's no money for the seafront work, that'll be seen through by the people who have witnessed the renaissance of the Whitley Bay seafront. We even had compliments from the chair of your own Conservative Association in your ward, telling us how wonderful the work was that we're actually doing. However, we did announce our ambitious programme, and that includes not only Whitley Bay, but includes the whole of the borough. And what we say there, these are our ambitions for the borough, and as and when finances arrive, we'll actually do that. And we can prove that because in between last week and this week, you'll have noticed in the change, you've put 100,000 in, but there's actually £500,000 and £50,000 gone in for sea defence work on the southern prom. But that's Whitley Bay, presumably not St Mary's, so that doesn't count as seafront. In addition, there's 500,000 plus 214,106 money that you say we're not spending, gone for an artificial, full-size artificial grass pitch at Amberley playing fields. But then that's not at the coast, so presumably you're not interested in what actually happens there. We have plans for the southern prom, the remaining part of the northern prom, the Rendezvous Cafe, St Mary's Island, and we're also planning for the introduction of wildlife wardens to protect and advise on wildlife habitats along our entire coastline. This will be part of our coastal mitigation strategy, which is a request from the National England, and that will be paid for by developers as well. So we are using that money to do that. Our capital plan is an ambitious one for the whole of Tyneside, as opposed to the cynical proposal that once again demonstrates that Conservatives only want to improve in their own particular area. But if we look at some of the points that were said by Councillor Hodgson, well, why didn't you do it? You see, you've always been in favour of it, but there's nothing appeared in your budget. It was said at the last meeting, it's been said before, and it's been in reports all year, that the move to the alternative weekly collection has increased the amount of money that we have, increased the amount of money that we save on recycling. Also, the equality is an instruction from your government to put the tolls on, so I'm glad you'll be defending that when that comes forward. But in the end, I support this, as I said, budget because it's for everybody. And I think we really found the true heart of the Tories there. When Councillor Brockman said philosophically he wants to keep as much money as possible. In other words, I'm all right, Jack. However, I believe that society judges you on how you care for the most vulnerable in your society, particularly children and adults. And you should be able to contribute to that. It should be on your ability to pay, not your ability to avoid tax.
And the last speaker, the elected mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that the opposition can be as scathing as they like about me in the Labour opposition. It doesn't bother me. I think you have to look at the last election. You have to look at the number of seats we have in this council since 2013. There must be people out there who actually think we're not doing not such a bad job for having said gone from 21 seats to 52. And you were, I don't know how many you were at that time, but you're now 6. So you can be as scathing as you like about me, my colleagues in the budget. But I'm proud what me, my colleagues down here, along with the officers, have actually achieved in North Tyneside. Not only did we win the election, but we're all increased majorities, would you believe? First time. So somehow the Labour administration in North Tyneside is doing a decent job. I guarantee we can't please everyone. I know that. But I do know, Councillor Brockbank, this budget is made up on what is concerning our residents, because I am out there all year round, and people can actually verify that, talking to various groups across. Pardon? Talking to various groups in this borough. And if you want evidence, you can just look at my diary where I am and who I'm speaking to. So don't tell me this hasn't been consulted with, because it has. I would also like to take this opportunity to say to our officers, thank you very much indeed. You've done us proud, because I never ever thought, when we looked at this budget at the beginning of the year, would get to this point. I want to also thank my colleagues here who worked extremely hard. In whatever you say about us in a scathing manner, the residents will come back and do us justice. Thank you very much.
Can I now invite Councillor Glindon to exercise his right to reply?
Chair, I will be brief for obvious reasons. I'll be getting wrong. It was mentioned there about the hefty tax rise. The Deputy Mayor pointed out that it's not us that want to put the tax up. It's the government that's forcing them to put the tax up. It's the old Tory trick. Blame us, not them. And if they've done it for the last, since 2010, apart from the fact that they give money into grants for use in 2010 to keep the council tax down. All costs on the council services are going up. We're talking about the cost of national living wage in the care sector. So them services are going to be paid for. Now, by reducing council tax, you're just making it harder and harder for us to try and pay for them services. I went to the supermarket today, and to prove a point, the price of beetroot has went up 50% today. So basically, I'm definitely going to support this budget because I'm part of it. I would like to thank the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor.
I don't think beetroot's in the budget, but was it crinkled or sliced?
It's in the procurement savings.
Is it? All right.
I was just making a comparison how stuff has gone up.
Capitalism allows them to shop around.
Well, I will shop, I'll do that. Which shop or Sainsbury's you'll shop at, Whitney Bay? I'd like to thank the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, the Cabinet and the Labour Councillors for all the help and setting this budget. And again, for the third time tonight, because I keep forgetting about them, the staff. Thank you very much.
We now move to the vote, and once again it'll be a named vote.
Councillor Jim Allen.
For.
Councillor Alison Austin. Councillor Gary Bell. Councillor Linda Bell. Councillor Karen Bolger. Councillor Trish Brady. Councillor Sean Brockbank. Councillor Brian Burdis. Councillor Carol Burdis. Councillor Joanne Cassidy. Councillor Debbie Cox. Councillor Stephen Cox. Councillor Naomi Craven. Councillor Eddie Dark. Councillor Linda Dark. Councillor Kath Davis. Councillor Sarah Day. Councillor Davy Drummond. Councillor Peter Early. Councillor Ray Glindon. Councillor Sandra Graham. Councillor Muriel Green. Councillor Margaret Hall. Councillor John Harrison. Councillor Ed Hodson. Councillor Janet Hunter. Councillor John Hunter. Councillor Nigel Huscroft. Councillor Carl Johnson. Councillor Joe Kerwin. Councillor Karen Lee. Councillor Karen Lee. Councillor Frank Lott. Councillor Wendy Lott. Councillor Gary Madden. Councillor Maureen Madden, Councillor Paul Mason, Councillor Pamela McIntyre, Councillor David McNicken, Councillor Janice Mole, Councillor Tommy Mulvenna, Councillor Andy Newman, Councillor Pat Oliver, Councillor Kate Osborne, Councillor John O'Shea, Councillor Norman Percy, Councillor Stephen Phillips, Councillor Bruce Pickard, Councillor Martin Rankin, Elected Mayor Norma Redfern, Councillor Margaret Reynolds, Councillor Willie Samuel, Councillor Leslie Spillard, Councillor John Sterling, Councillor Matthew Thirlaway, and Councillor Judith Wallace. 48 for and 6 against. 1 abstention. 48 for, 6 against and 1 abstention.
The result of the vote is 48 in favour, 6 against and 1 abstention. Therefore the budget has been approved. Right? As the budget has been and council tax has now been approved, the council meeting provisionally scheduled for the 5th of March will no longer be required. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting. Everybody have a safe journey home.